Imagine this. It's August 1977 in a quiet, ordinary council house in Enfield, North London. The Hodgson family, a single mother named Peggy and her 4 children, are about to become the center of a story that would grip the nation and become one of the most documented and debated paranormal cases in history. It all began simply enough, with a noise, a shuffling sound, like someone dragging a chair across the floor. But then, things escalated. The children, particularly 11-year-old Janet and her older sister Margaret, started complaining about their beds shaking violently in the middle of the night. Peggy, a practical woman, initially dismissed it as kids playing pranks. But one evening, she heard the shuffling herself. She went into her daughter's room to find a heavy chest of drawers sliding across the floor, seemingly on its own. No matter how hard she pushed, she couldn't move it back. A chilling, invisible force resisted her. In that moment, terror replaced skepticism. This was no prank. This was something else. Terrified, Peggy gathered her children and fled to her neighbor's house. The neighbors, Vic and Peggy Nottingham, were understandably doubtful at first. But when Vic went into the Hodgson house to investigate, he heard the same strange knocking sounds echoing from the walls. He described it as if someone was hammering from inside the house. The police were called, but even a seasoned officer was left baffled and shaken. She witnessed a chair levitate and move across the room with no explanation and signed an official affidavit confirming what she saw. The Enfield Poltergeist had made its presence known, and this was only the beginning. News of the strange happenings at 284 Green Street spread like wildfire. Soon, paranormal investigators from the Society for Psychical Research, Maurice Grosse and Guy Lyon Playfair, arrived on the scene. They were determined to scientifically document whatever was happening in the house. They set up cameras, tape recorders, and temperature gauges ready to capture proof. What they recorded over the next 18 months would become the stuff of legend. The activity intensified dramatically. Objects flew through the air, toys, marbles, and even knives. Loud, inexplicable knocking sounds echoed through the house, seeming to respond to questions. Furniture would be overturned, and cold spots would suddenly appear in rooms. The investigators documented over 1,500 separate paranormal events. At the center of it all was young Janet Hodgson. It seemed the entity or entities were focused on her. She was levitated from her bed, thrown across rooms by an unseen force, and would often fall into strange, trance-like states. Then came the voice. A deep, raspy, guttural voice started to speak through Janet. It was a chilling sound, one that no 11-year-old girl should be able to produce. The voice claimed to be a man named Bill Wilkins, who said he had died in a chair in the corner of the living room years before. He spoke of his death, a hemorrhage before going blind. The investigators were stunned. They later found a man whose father confirmed that a Bill Wilkins had indeed lived and died in that house, exactly as the voice described. The tapes of these conversations are bone-chilling to listen to even today. You can hear the gruff, elderly man's voice emerging from this small child, cursing and describing his final moments. Of course, with such extraordinary claims came intense scrutiny. Many believed the girls were faking it all, seeking attention. And to be fair, the children were caught faking incidents on a few occasions. They admitted to bending spoons and hiding the investigators' tape recorders. This led many skeptics to dismiss the entire case as an elaborate hoax. The media, which had once been fascinated, turned on the family, branding them as frauds. The pressure was immense. However, the investigators, Grosse and Playfair, remained convinced that while some minor fakery was involved, it didn't explain the majority of the phenomena they witnessed firsthand. How could 2 young girls move a heavy chest of drawers? How could Janet levitate in her sleep? How could she produce a voice that vocal experts confirmed was not coming from her own vocal cords? Video footage captured Janet being thrown from her bed. Photographs showed her midair, her face contorted in what looks like pain or fear. The evidence was compelling yet impossible to fully prove. The investigators argued that children in poltergeist cases often fake things, sometimes out of a desire to please the adults, sometimes to get attention when the real phenomena dies down, and sometimes because they're simply bored and mischievous kids. But does that invalidate the hundreds of other documented events? For instance, Gross once saw a book fly from a shelf and land at his feet. When he placed it back, it flew out again. He put it back a second time, and it flew a third time. He then held the book firmly on the shelf, and he could feel it vibrating, trying to break free from his grip. Another terrifying incident involved a Lego brick. One moment it was on the floor. The next it flew across the room at high speed, hitting a photographer in the face just below his eye. It was hot to the touch, as if it had been heated up. These weren't gentle, floating objects. This was aggressive physical activity. The family lived in constant fear. They would find messages scrawled on the walls, fires would spontaneously start, and they would be physically pushed and shoved by this unseen tormentor. It was a living nightmare. The question remains, was it a genuine poltergeist, a collective hallucination, or one of the most intricate hoaxes ever perpetrated by children? The Enfield Poltergeist case is a perfect storm of compelling evidence and frustrating ambiguity. The audio recordings, the photographs, the eyewitness testimonies from police, neighbors, and journalists, they all point to something truly unexplainable happening in that house. Yet the admission of fakery casts a permanent shadow of doubt. Even Janet herself, now an adult, maintains that while they did fake about 2% of the events to see if the investigators would catch them, the rest was absolutely real. She speaks of the trauma and the terror of being a vessel for something she couldn't understand or control. The haunting eventually faded away after a priest visited the house in 1978, but the story never did. The events at 284 Green Street inspired books, documentaries, and of course the blockbuster movie The Conjuring 2, which brought the story to a whole new generation. But the film takes significant creative liberties, introducing the famous paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren into the story, who in reality had very minimal, almost non-existent involvement with the actual case. The real story belongs to the Hodgson family and the investigators who dedicated months of their lives to trying to understand the terrifying mystery unfolding before them. So what do you think? Was it a desperate plea for attention from a family under stress? Or did the walls of that small London house truly hold a malevolent spirit? The Enfield Poltergeist remains Britain's most documented haunting, a chilling testament to the fact that sometimes the most ordinary places can hold the most extraordinary and terrifying secrets. The tapes still exist, the photos are still analyzed, and the debate rages on. It's a ghost story that refuses to die. Thanks for watching. If you're fascinated by mysteries that defy explanation, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the world's most baffling cases. Let me know your theory on the Enfield Poltergeist in the comments below. See you next time.